Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, bird brothers and sisters everywhere. Touchdown Talk is back. Episode 16 coming at you guys. What's up? Lindy Endzone in for the touchdown, taking the lead for the Philadelphia Eagles. One video at a time. And I'll tell you what, this is a special episode for me personally, and aside from the fact that Philly Mike has made his appearance on my channel here. It's been a long time coming, Mike. I know, with your channel growing the way it is, and I tell you what, for nostalgia purposes, and it's kind of nostalgic to me, and first starting my channel, I think almost 2 years ago now already. I was crazy, time flies. I remember personally being a part of, when you guys were really strong in the Battlebirds podcast with Philly Fresh and Gate City, and you guys doing those call-ins and everything. And I remember so long ago already being a part of a couple of those call-ins, being aside and creating my channel and watching your growth as well as mine over those last couple of years, and how things are coming full circle, and I get to have you on the channel. After after quite a while, not to say for a different purpose, but you know where I'm getting with that. There's a nostalgia behind it to me, but I appreciate you taking the time out to talk some Eagles football. How's your Monday have been?
Hey, it's going pretty good. Not too much news coming out, but
Right.
anytime a hype video comes out by a player itself, you got to feel some type of way. I like just the vibe of this team, not really having to put any work in until July 26th, but you see the all-field stuff. Darius Slay tweeting up like, hey, tomorrow I'm going to be in New Jersey. Who wants to get that work in? Lane Johnson benching like 500 plus in the gym, making sure IG sees that. And you got AJ Brown, not just making it about himself, but making it about him and the team and just the work behind the scenes that are putting in. And so you start to feel a certain vibe, a certain spark, a certain mentality of this team. And I think it's being built the right way, the exact right way.
It's interesting. Yeah, like it's interesting because there seems to be a lot more of a youth movement going on with with these younger players coming in and taking a hold of this football team. Like they want to be the next generation. They want to be the next generation of leaders to kind of create a regime of their own, and and then between them and the veterans, they're taking the veterans in, and they're developing something. It's huge. It's huge. And speaking of Lane Johnson with his bench pressing and everything, you already know Jalen Hurts probably going to be in competition with that, with all the with all the videos we've seen of him at the collegiate level with the bench pressing that he was doing. You already know that. But we're going to get into the topics here right away, man. Because while at this point, being that it's a little bit slow, in terms of training camp and the anticipation of it coming up and whatnot. But being that we haven't had much conversation between ourselves, but I think I have an idea on what your answers are going to, definitely be going forward. But at the same time, like for this first topic here with the Eagles. Like the biggest impact signing. Now they have had quite a few. Some are top heavy, some are not. They're not exactly eye catching, but they make sense for the position that it is. So you look at AJ Brown, you look at Hassan Reddick, you look at Anthony Harris coming back, you look at Jaquiski Tartt, which was the more recent one. Although he hasn't signed the papers yet, they have agreed to terms, but we'll see what comes out of that. But when you try and balance between the offense and the defense overall, and really it almost seems like it comes down to two players between AJ Brown and Hassan Reddick. But to you, who would be your biggest impact signing for Philly and why?
Yeah, it's tough. I believe if you're talking impact signing, it's one of them too, AJ Brown, Hassan Reddick. You look at the categories in which they're going to help out. we talk about a team that was 31st in sacks. We need help
Right.
there. And a team that was in 25th in passing. So, the quarterback plays a part in that, but the guys who the quarterback get the ball to are the other big piece. The offensive line has been stout, protecting Hurts in different ways in the run game throughout the whole year. So you look at a 25th overall passing game, could use another dominant wide receiver, and the 31st overall team in sacks can use a pass rusher. In that sense right there, I still got to go AJ Brown just because of the how it came about, right? So Hassan Reddick, much needed, and it impacted our team, but it was still early on, and it was something that we knew we were going to touch on via offseason or the draft. Maybe it could have been one of them, David Ojabo type players.
Right.
But we got it done early, which made us, be able to fall back in the draft. But the way it happened, with all the rumors about a DK Metcalf, Debo Samuels, AJ Brown, for it to happen just like that is, to me, the biggest impact you can have in the offseason, because it just shows the fan base, it shows the team that we're all in. We're all in. And so I think that move on draft day in front of the national, everybody watches the draft.
Quite a spotlight, right? Yeah.
To make that move puts a stamp on where you think your team is, especially when people are throwing out still retooling, still not sure, still not this, that, and the third. To go out there and do that is the biggest impact I think you can make in football.
Yeah, it for me. It's most sure definitely an interesting contrast, and when you when you put AJ Brown and Hassan Reddick at the top in terms of their acquisitions and what they mean from an offensive and defensive standpoint, well, offensively you can look and say, all right, well, this is top of the top in terms of evaluation of your quarterback. And not only do you get an AJ Brown as a receiver who has Pro Bowl caliber, he's one of the top guys in the league, but at the same time, he brings the intangible element to which him and Jalen Hurts off the field are best friends. And as Eagles fans, we have been used to that over the last few years when we seen the connection between Carson Wentz and Zach Ertz, and what that has meant for them in terms of teammates, on and off the field. And but it's interesting because I made a video on it in which, to me, I hope it doesn't like over exaggerate in a way that when we seen Carson use Zach as too much of a security blanket, and it really created too negative of a tunnel vision effect in where he would just zone off and look for Zach on every single play because he knew like 9 times out of 10 Zach was going to be open. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, that can't surely be the case this time, because for one, you're talking about Ertz at the tight end position. He's a receiving tight end, but that still has a good level of blocking to his game. But you're talking a tight end instead of receiver, and then you say, okay, well, Devontae Smith is on the field, Dallas Goddard is on the field, Quez Watkins gives them another option. So that's where a bit of the that's a bit of where the contrast comes in. It's like, okay, well, that can't necessarily happen. So but I was like, I had to throw it out there a little bit just because the elements seem similar, but I don't think it's going to have the same effect, especially when you talk about Jalen Hurts developing as a quarterback. So with that, I don't feel any kind of negative impact in their off the field standing with them being best friends at all. But I just thought it was something interesting to bring up.
Well, let me go off that. I agree in the sense of one thing is good is that Jalen Hurts and Devontae, although they were not as close as AJ Brown, they got a season in together before AJ got there, right? So there was chemistry built, prior to the signing, just being Alabama brothers, to now going through 1 year of really a rookie and a first-year starter. And so that chemistry and growth right there is going to go a long way. And when you really look at the improvements of Jalen Hurts' game down the stretch, being able to throw to the left a little bit more, staying in the pocket, making a couple reads, especially delivering in the middle, that's where Dallas Goddard started to shine later in the year. Mind you,
Absolutely.
Dallas Goddard was never wasn't the tight end one throughout the whole season. Zach Ertz was still on this roster for
Yeah.
half of the time. So I think that the continuity built, or the chemistry built between Smith and Goddard prior to AJ Brown there, is going to keep everything grounded. And Jalen Hurts
Right.
understands that he's the point guard. He said it numerous times. It's good that he's coming out in front of it, that he got players that can catch the ball and get things done. That I just got to facilitate and feed all the hungry people out there. And there's going to be a lot of hungry people out there. But
Right.
with what we have, I think that's why the coaching staff got to lean a little bit more pass heavy, not throwing away the run and whatnot, but definitely letting the playbook be a little bit more open. Jalen Hurts have a little bit more autonomy at the line if he, worked on the things that we think he worked on, and he is ready to take that step. We'll see.
Absolutely. And and sometimes you can say, well, too much of a good thing is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think that's a good definition to go by with this football team from an offensive standpoint. And you can arguably say from a defensive standpoint with the upgrades that they were able to make in the secondary, the linebacking core, which for for how many years now we've been begging for upgrades at that position. Now, granted, they're not, they're not eye popping themselves either. But what guys like Nakobe Dean and Kaiser White mean just from a depth perspective, they shine a light that we haven't really seen in a while. I think since the departure of Jordan Hicks, although Hicks was able to offer, some things that were a little bit different. He was a tackling machine. He was able to force fumbles, get in, plenty of interceptions, to where I think there's going to be more of a balance with this group where you got a collection of athletes that are ready to just go sideline to sideline and really smother the run game and put a little bit extra pressure on the quarterback so he can't sit there and pat the ball and go through his reads. So I think there's a little bit of a difference there. But going back to the receivers and the weapons that Jalen Hurts has, I think another element that you can go to that's just as important is we have a collection of players here that I don't really see any selfishness with them. You know what I mean? They don't seem like the group of guys that have that, that essence of drama to them. Like, well, make sure I get X amount of targets, or, I want to have this many catches. Now, granted, we did see a little bit of frustration last year out of Devontae Smith, but I think that was more in terms of a schematic standpoint and Sirianni, trying to adjust and make changes based on how his quarterback was playing and what he was seeing from a defensive standpoint. So although we've seen things like that, I think that kind of frustration was more from an execution standpoint, whereas Devontae being a little irritated and not getting the football enough from his quarterback. But when you look at the collection now, I think, these guys are in a position where, there's no egos to put aside. They're a group of kids, really, because the youth of this football team has dropped dramatically since the 2020 season, I believe, where it was skyrocketing with the retention of guys like Jason Peters and whatnot.
Especially offensively,
But shout out to JP because he's still trying to play the left tackle spot. He's pushing 40 years old. He's still out there trying to compete. I think last for the Chicago Bears. But getting back to the receivers and saying that, I think that's something that we can't really put to the wayside in terms of importance. And these guys just don't have egos that we have to look after, and the coaches are trying to control. They're all on the same page in wanting to create that winning culture again that we haven't seen since our Super Bowl run in 2017.
Yeah, just to touch on that shortly, Devontae was upset because the ball was being thrown to a guy who can't catch the ball. I think when you just look at Devontae's demeanor, being willing to block as much as he did, you heard him mic'd up in the Lions game, like, bro, we ain't throwing the ball today. We getting it done via the ground. You don't see many receivers excited about that. Look at Dallas Goddard. He was in a contract year and really put no fuss sharing the position with Zach Ertz. Now he's paid. If he had to share the
Mm-hmm.
position now, it don't matter. You already got the bag. But to get the bag, you got to show that you deserve the bag. So I think the unselfishness has been proven. AJ Brown letting Derrick Henry rush 30 times a game is just a group of guys that are willing to do whatever it takes to get the dub.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's yeah, like we're saying. I think that's one of the biggest, that's one of the biggest qualities that really the Eagles have carried for quite a long time now. We haven't been known as a franchise to really, what's the word I'm looking for? Like we don't attract those kinds of players, and we don't really try to retain those
We're
kinds of
not the
players.
Cowboys.
It's well, I mean, there you go. But we maintain a culture of positivity that way, and it's very important when you want to be a winning football team. So, and as we segue into the next question here, speaking of question, most questionable return signings for Philly, and while there isn't too many to name off, whether you can put Derek Barnett in there, you could put Anthony Harris in there for this one as well. But really, I think it comes down to just those two. Even including Boston Scott for a running back room that doesn't have a whole lot of depth right now. That it can pose question marks as much as it does, definitive answers. So, I mean, you got Derek Barnett, you got Anthony Harris over Rodney McLeod, which was quite a question mark for some, and then you got Boston Scott coming back, for another 1 year deal, I believe. So, I mean, of those three, who are you? And I think I know who you're going to say here. I think I have an idea, much like everybody else, where you know where I'm going. But most questionable return when it comes to the Eagles.
It's hard to say anything other than Derek Barnett because of
Mm-hmm.
what's going to be asked by these other guys, and still, like, when I look at Boston Scott, I never thought that he was supposed to do anything that he didn't do. Like, actually, to me,
Right.
he's a guy who overachieved his whole time he's been in Philly. He
Mm-hmm.
When he's gotten the ball or when he's been asked to do something, he's low key delivered. So I can't be mad at that. Anthony Harris, coming into the system for a first year, he played better down the stretch of the season. But Derek Barnett has been what we call a big disappointment. Cost me $100 because I was drunk on one of the people's streams, and I said that he'll get six sacks this past season. This was in the off season. I thought he really would with the other guys on this D line. Now look, eye test shows that at times he's very vicious. He got a nice bend. He's quick, and he shows that he can get pressure. But with all the attitude and the lack of like care at times, it's just mind boggling for not only to bring him back, but for next year, I need to say the reason why is because of his football IQ and all that. Like, talk about a
Yeah.
motor and whatnot, but not to say the smarts in the game. Um, it's frustrating, but when explained and now looking like he'll be a rotation player, you can't be too mad at that. The Fletcher Cox thing, you could talk about that as a
Yeah,
return
that's another
signing
one. Yeah.
for the simple fact that we let him go to free up some money, another Howie Roseman specialty. I had no doubt in my mind that the Eagles wanted him back. I just thought that maybe Fletch say, I know Eagles are going to give me one more year depending on the money. Let me go look elsewhere. But making him be one of the top D tackles on a per year basis with the 14 mil is what still kept him around. But yeah, I would still have to say Derek Barnett just because, we haven't really we didn't really resign any. And that's the thing. We're so unsure on the guys that we're bringing back that they're all 1 year deals. Kelsey and Fletch, they're older 1 year deals. Harris, Barnett, and Scott, we don't really see a bright future with them. They're not important pieces, so they're also coming back on a short year deal. So I don't think it's like, it's neither here or there in the sense that we not really expecting much for any of these guys who actually return back, because there wasn't a guy that we say, you know what, we're bringing him back long term, and we're like, huh, why? You know, the guys who were kind of suspect are short term. The guys who deserve to be back, which is the Mulattas, and they didn't come back, but we
Yeah.
extended them the whole 2018 draft. Maddox, Sweat,
Hmm.
Mulata, um, all them guys, they deserve it.
Yeah, Avante Maddox locking down that slot spot. Yeah, I mean, and I guess part of why I didn't include guys like Fletch and Kelsey is because, well, I did have a little bit of faith in the back of my mind that something would eventually get done, because I mean they've devoted how many years of Pro Bowl type of productivity to this franchise, and the Eagles aren't going to want to do a disservice to these guys so long as they are in a position to where they want to come back. And we have heard the rumblings about Kelsey contemplating retirement, I think at least twice now, and he came back once again because, well, I mean, aside from him being our Lord and center, as the best center in football at 34 years old, and, all bias aside, I think that's more than fair to say at his position of the game and what he has meant for being an undersized center, and, really showing a different way on how to play the position, the athleticism that he possesses. He has done a lot, and then you look at Fletch being a important staple of the defensive line, and what he means coming back for a guy like Jordan Davis that we have taken out of the draft, and Jordan us wanting Jordan to be a 2.0 of Fletch. What that does for guys like Javon Hargrave, and BG making his return from that Achilles at 34. There's a lot to look forward to here. But yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of like, I guess, to me, with Anthony Harris over Rodney McLeod, because of what Rodney brought, not just on the field but off the field, like his the amount of involvement that he has had in the city of Philadelphia, what he meant to that football team after the departure of Malcolm Jenkins, and taking up that captain role in the secondary, especially for the group of safeties. And but I think it was eventually his time either way, and having to sustain multiple ACL injuries, a guy at almost 33 years old, you don't know how sustainable he's going to be moving forward. And while Anthony Harris is a little bit healthier, he still has a bit more familiarity and a Jonathan Gannon style of defense coming from Minnesota, and and the roots of Mike Zimmer, although Gannon hasn't blitzed like Mike Zimmer to this point. But I kind of felt like, okay, now it's starting to make a little bit more sense that I think about it. But when you boil it down, Mister, it's always him. No matter what Sirianni says, I mean, it was easy lip service right there. It was easy to point out as we're watching on the live feed on the sidelines of him. He said it. I think he at least said it twice. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it's a shame because of it's a shame because of the status of Derek coming out of the collegiate level, and coming from the Volunteers and breaking Reggie White's sack record from there, and we had a lot of expectations in that, and just it's a shame that he was another first round pick that didn't necessarily pan out to this point. But to bring him back, I guess the questionable asset there, but it just sucks for a player as a first round pick that he returns on a lesser role. That's the part that kind of sucks. But if that's something that's going to, if that's something that's necessary to revive his career in a sense, to where, being that the Eagles structured the contract where they can get out of this year, being that it's 2 years. If it puts him in a position where he gets a fresh start elsewhere, and a new touch on NFL life in his career as a defensive end, then the opportunity is there. But yeah, overall, I mean, Eagles, I get that you love depth on the defensive line, but he was more of a net negative than a net positive. I mean, you can't spin it any other way.
I agree.
So, with those two out of the way, already 25 minutes into this one, ladies and gentlemen, I know this is I know this is probably a reach, but um, if you don't know who Philly Mike is by now, I don't know why you wouldn't. But link is in the description of the stream here to give his channel a check, and for the amount of Eagles and Sixers content that he does and the devotion for both franchises, it's worth a look through. It's worth a subscription. Do your due diligence. Be sure to head over there to Philly Mike's channel. Give him the love and support that he deserves. So let us get into number 3 here, and this one's, I think, amongst the 4 topics that I have, I think this one's the most exciting to me in terms of the top positional battles in training camp. And when you look across the board of the depth chart for the Eagles, and we already know what we got going on at wide receiver between A.J. Brown, and you bring in Zach Pascal, Deion Kane, and then you got the exciting explosiveness between Devin Allen and Britton Covey, and us hoping that they can spark a little bit of life into special teams, which arguably was the worst positional group last year as a unit, as a whole. I mean, and it's no slight on any of these players, Mike, but it's just a shame where you get Greg Ward, who earns the nickname of Fair Catch because that's all he really did. He didn't, there's guy that didn't really want to take big risks and everything, always fair caught everything. Jalen Reagor was a mess in and of himself with with his involvement in the offense, and then random fumbles here and there. And then you get Boston Scott, who tried. He tried, but there was a little bit of a inconsistency in terms of productivity and in terms of special teams. But when you look across the board, you have receiver built up the way it is with the amount of guys that you have. John Hightower is starting to come back into the spotlight. You see him on Twitter and Instagram involved with Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown. He's getting himself into the mix again. You look at the cornerback situation with the amount of bodies that are over there, with the addition of James Bradbury and our guy Big Play Slay on the outside. You got your 2 outside guys, and then sometimes we throw some others to the wayside, and guys like Tay Gowan, Craig James for special teams. You got Mario Goodrich, who the Eagles gave some guaranteed money to. Josh Jobe. Even a guy like Josiah Scott, who can really hone himself in as a backup role for the slot position behind Avonte Maddox. But when you look across the board as a whole, and see the amount of bodies that we have at all of these different positional groups, if you had to break it down, what are your most exciting positions that you're going to be looking at in terms of training camp, and how the competition is going to ramp up?
Well, yeah, there's a couple. I'll start with the linebacker position. We spoke about it a little bit earlier in the stream. Although there's no big names besides one, Nakobe Dean, I think that's a name that you really got to watch, because although he hasn't shown no footage in the NFL, and just because you dominate college don't mean you'll dominate the NFL. But we do see him as a playmaker, and he has the ability to really open people's eyes, especially after being slept on to the 3rd round. So I think just the whole linebacker position, as Night King said in here, Kaiser White, I think Davion Taylor and TJ Edwards are not going to just sit back and let people take their positions as well. TJ Edwards, probably our most improved linebacker in the last 3 years, after giving some playing time. And you look at a guy like Davion Taylor, who started every time he got playing time. The fans, the coaching staff, we started to see some good stuff out of him, and then an injury comes. So I think you got Kaiser White, you got some good guys over there that are brought here, whether they're from a different team and or as a rookie, and you got guys who are still competing. Now we flip it over to the safety position, right? Who is it going to be? You bring in Jaquiski Tartt, you got
Mm-hmm.
Harris, still Wallace on the team, but I'm not sleeping on Marcus Epps. I just did a video yesterday about Malcolm Jenkins, speaking very highly about him, and these are things that I seen too. He was graded as our top safety via PFF, but he definitely didn't play enough snaps to really qualify it going against Harris and Ronnie McLeod. But it shows that when he
Right.
was in there, he was able to do it. So now we got to see him with more snaps. But he's been growing ever since he's started to get a little playing time and a couple more spots. The wide receiver position, although we got the bookends 1 and 2 or 1A, 1B, Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, that third and fourth guy is going to be important because you got a bunch of names competing for it, right? Pascal Quez, is that the fight for 3? Rager
Mm-hmm.
and whoever else, right? Rager and the loser of the Quez and Pascal are going to fight for 4. And you still got guys who are trying to jump up the depth chart. You got a guy like Britton Covey and Devin Allen. I think they're both fighting for that one position, which is a, do it all type of guy who makes his name on special teams. Can't really bring them both in with all the wide receivers we got. So I think there's a lot of battles for the depth positions in certain areas that still get playing time. That third safety will be in on big nickel. We
Yep.
talk about Avonte Maddox, James Bradbury, and Darius Slay, but what happens when a team goes 5 receiver set? I know last year Jonathan Gannon said, well, I don't know. We don't have the personnel to play dime, which will be 4 DBs in there, right? He could have played dime. He just could have threw
Yeah.
a safety in there. It would have looked like a big nickel, but it still could have been played out. You could have played a safety in a role of a dime defense, quarters coverage and whatnot. With all that
Right.
being said, we brought a guy in like Jimmy Moreland. We still got Mario Goodrich and
Mm-hmm.
Tay Gowan. So my thing is, I understand the 3-piece McNuggets on the 4-3 front and a nickel back front. But who is that trustworthy cornerback? McPherson, Goodrich,
Yeah.
Jimmy Moreland,
Former
when they
fourth
go
rounder. Yep.
when they make us go dime. So I think that when you look at the top wide receivers, the top corners, the offensive line is pretty much sure up. The top, even the number 1 safety, I think you can really say we're good there. It's the other people who still are going to get meaningful snaps, who can really ruin a game still for you, that I think we have enough depth that it's going to be interesting. And my motto is iron sharpens iron. So I think that
Right.
people just want to go automatically to the linebacker position, but there's definitely wide receiver, linebacker, safety. You got one spot on the offensive line being fought for. You got a backup tight end role because we will play 12 personnel.
Mm-hmm.
Who's it going to be? Tyree Jackson? Is it going to be Jack Stull? Is Grant Casatera going to come in here? How many snaps is Kyron Johnson going to have? And I didn't mean to be long-winded, but that's how good and that's how
Right.
fun training camp is about to be in about 30 days.
No, it's okay to be that way though, because it's a good problem to have. And we're trying to figure out when the last time it was that the Eagles were this deep at every positional group. It's kind of hard to really assess, but they're not deep to the point where they still don't have holes. Okay, you look at the right guard spot, for example, and we just seen that Isaac Seumalo made the positional change from the left to the right side. He didn't want to be in a position where you're looking at it like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. He has watched over the course of his rehabilitation the chemistry of Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata, what they're building on the left side. I don't think at this point you're going to want to separate the two towers. I don't think you're going to want to separate them apart and try Landon somewhere else because of the amount of versatility that he has. Now let's remember, when Isaac Seumalo was drafted, he was expected to be a replacement for Jason Kelsey at some point, knowing coming out of college that Isaac has taken most of his snaps from the center. I think he took the second most at left guard, and then I think he took the third most at right guard or right tackle. So, he has a decent amount of versatility within his own right. So, it's almost, when you look at the guys behind him in Coyote they just brought in William Dunkel, I think, Jack Anderson. you're not all that confident with that grouping over there. So it's almost in perfect timing that Isaac Sayamalu has become healthy enough to where he can hone in on that right guard spot, and it's not like it's going to be a difficult transition for him either. I don't think it's going to be to the point where it's an Andre Dillard situation where he's complaining about it's like riding with the opposite hand because, well, sometimes Jeff Stoutland can do all he can, but it's up to the player to want to try and hone in and build build a versatility in his own right. And as good as Jeff Stoutland is as an O-line coach, sometimes sometimes it doesn't happen. So you look at a guy like Andre Dillard, he's kind of stuck on the left side, but he's kind of bulking up to where he could move inside to be a guard. Because right now his biggest weakness is bull rushes off the edge, and we seen, I think it was last year, where he was just getting eaten alive and by Josh Sweat, and then in some cases Derek Barnett was taking advantage. So it doesn't work for everybody, but yeah, that right guard spot, Isaac Sayamalu comes in at the perfect time to shore up that position. Now, knock on wood, if somebody gets hurt, then we're looking at some other problems. I don't think we need a repeat of 2020, Mike, where this team was at 14 different offensive line rotations in 16 games. We cannot afford to do that again. But I think it all ties into the fact of that offensive line was a little bit older. You still had a Brandon Brooks that was battling an Achilles. You had a Lane Johnson that had ankle issues. Jason Peters was in there. The incompetent Jamon Brown was in there. So with that being the total mess in itself that it was, we're by any means, we're in no position for something like that to happen again. When you look at, Jordan Mailata, the way he was able to come into his own as a 7th round pick and really rehabilitate himself from that back injury and turn into arguably a top 5 to top 10 tackle on the left side in the NFL, and completely deserving of the extension that he got. You look at that, and Landon Dickerson,
great deal.
Us going into last year, we're not thinking that Landon's starting, because, what the question was is, is he going to get redshirted? How are his knees? This guy went through 2 ligament tears, 1 in each knee, right? And I'm not trying, you blessing yourself over there. I'm not trying to speak anything into existence, but we have to take injuries into consideration, because I think that is the biggest factor in what could ruin this year's football team. With all the excitement that we have, injuries are going to be the thing that tears them completely apart. I don't think it's going to be a matter of an implosion of Jonathan Gannon. I don't think it's going to be Jalen Hurts not taking that next developmental step. I don't see those as 2 top factors in this. I don't even want to throw Nick Sirianni up in there, because really you can't go any further down. You can only go up. Right, and that's what we were trying to hope for from 2020, and I think that's the direction in which the team is ultimately going. And clearly, you see what they did throughout the draft. You talked about the just the aura in the moment of what the trade for AJ Brown did, and only really giving up a 3rd for him. We pick swapped with the Titans, so it's not like we gave up anything. They just moved to our position, and we essentially just gave up a 3rd if you want to do a pick swap for AJ Brown.
Not because we gave up the 18th pick.
I thought it was a pick swap this whole time.
No,
I could have sworn it was a pick swap, but I thought I was wrong. The
thing is,
because it was a 1st and a 3rd.
Yes, and right. So we gave up the 3rd we got from the Saints, and we gave up our 1st. So it was literally what it really was is 1 first round in the middle of the round for AJ Brown, which is still a no-brainer, because whatever receiver you're drafting there, you can only hope that they're AJ Brown. Which is funny, because they did draft a guy who, if you had to
his quote-unquote replacement in Treylon Burks.
Yeah, if you had to say that this person has anybody, who does he look like? It's an AJ Brown type. So He definitely try to do it, but he's not AJ Brown. That boy
Yeah.
different.
No, well, I mean, not yet. We'll just say not yet to give him the benefit of the doubt and try
And I
and
even
and
yeah, I even think
and
AJ's
try
in his
and lift the
prime.
Titans' spirits. We're gonna try and lift the Titans' spirits at the same time.
I
You
can't
know
do
what I
that.
mean? I
They've
mean,
been they've been they've been too negative to my guy. They've been throwing
yeah, no,
they've been throwing him around on his Twitter
yeah, that's
mentions. So
fair.
he's ready to
That's
come out
fair.
hungry. He's hungry.
Right, right. No, that's fair too. But yeah, I mean, when you look at it across the board, just going back to the offensive line, they're still in a great position. I mean, Jack Driscoll can swap between the right tackle and right guard spot. You still got Lane Johnson there. You still got LaRaven Clark. So we have the necessary depth in almost every spot besides right guard, to me. So, offensive line, there's really not a whole lot going there outside of seeing the potential in a guy like Cam Jurgens, who was handpicked by Jason Kelsey himself, along with the scouting department and other responsibilities from the front office, and seeing what he is going to ultimately become. Because, well, from a developmental standpoint, it seems right now he's kind of on a short leash, because outside of him, the Eagles don't really have anyone else to go to. If you're going to say, like, this is Jason Kelsey's last year, well, he doesn't want the Eagles to miss a beat when he retires. So that's part of the reason why Cam Jurgens was the selection, because he was the player that mimicked Kelsey's play style the most at the center position. So with that said, you're kind of putting in a position like, well, does he really have only a year in terms of development to see what he is going into next year, to try and find out if he's the guy moving forward? Do they move Landon over there? If Isaac's still on the team, do they try him at center? Is that guy going to be in next year's draft? I mean, I think there's still some legitimate future questions there at center, but at least we can say, we were blessed with another year, Jason Kelsey, that he is going to remain, as that anchor on the offensive line. But
I think they feel really good, really confident in him, in the sense of they wanted Kobe Dean in the second round too, but because Jurgens
yes,
was still on the board there, they said, look, whatever's going around media that's keeping people off Nakobe Dean, it low-key kept the Eagles off him at second round. But more, what kept them off is Cam Jurgens is still there. The upside, the fact that Kelsey likes him, that Stoutland likes him, that we believe he can be either replacement earlier rather than later. I think that's why they did that. And then that's why they were clamoring or just, drooling when that third round pick came in and Kobe was still there. So, I mean, I was question mark about the pick, but all in all, Cam Jurgens is not ready to just come in and be that guy right now. But I think he's
no.
in very, very good hands, and I think he'll get there.
And interesting enough, it's funny how coincidental this year's class has been at the second round pick to last year's, where we were saying the same things about Landon Dickerson, and, well, linebackers were still on the board. We needed this, we needed that, and it came full circle again, where we selected another offensive lineman in the second round, and people are like, wait a minute, I mean, we're trying to address other positions here that, the depth is clearly not there. Well, we need a linebacker. We needed a safety. I personally wanted a safety in the second round. I forget, and the kid's name is falling off the top of my head, but I don't think Jaquan Brisker was available at that point. And I wanted Jalen Petre. I wanted him at the second round pick because of the versatility that he possessed at the safety position. But, well, as we know of the result of the draft class, it ended up being Cam Jurgens. But still, I don't think, either way, I don't think it was a negative whatsoever, being that, this was Jason Kelsey's pick after all, and the magic that he and Jeff Stoutland are going to work with this kid and bring him up at that safety position. And just to know just to know the positional change that Cam went through from tight end to center, and I thought it was funny in how he explained it, in the fact that well, he didn't get the chance to run people over as much as a tight end, the way he the way he does at the center position. So I like that grit about him. I like that personality that he possesses. You know what I mean? So but to segue into the tight end position, which I like where it is right now, from a competition perspective, me personally. So, and it's tough at the same time, because these guys behind Dallas Goddard, and it's great. It's great to have, like we talked about, or like you talked about early in the stream, with the situation between Zach Ertz and Dallas Goddard, and how it was still a 1A 1B type of situation, and the proper switch wasn't able to happen. Goddard was still waiting in the wings, wanting to be that guy, wanting to take over. He gets his extension, which he rightfully deserved, although there is some reservations about him by some people in the fan base. There's a little bit of reservation because
He
of,
drops a
I
couple
think,
easy ones last year that made you just go like this.
Right, right, and people were talking about, oh well, he's not as great of a route runner as Ertz, and yada yada. But
It's hard to be Ertz. Ertz
right,
was number 3
but
or number 2 for a long time
right.
in the NFL.
Like, you couldn't talk about George Kittle and Travis Kelce without mentioning Zach Ertz in the conversation. I mean, at some point, that's where Zach was. But one of the biggest differences that we can contrast between Goddard and Ertz is that Goddard's a lot more physical, and he has the ability to fight for those extra yardage, and what people like to coin the phrase "no yak Zach" sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, although sometimes that was the case, you still, there was still no disrespect towards what Zach was able to do at that position, and carrying the torch, so to speak, after after Brent Selleck's departure, and him having to drop down the depth chart, and how Zach took over. So now you look at Dallas Goddard; he's in the same position. He's the guy that's leading that group. So behind him, you have the promising Jack Stull, who a lot of people, okay, well, another undrafted guy out of Nebraska, and he was in a spot where people were trying to figure him out. Do we want to better him as a pass catcher? Do we want to set him up primarily for blocking? We already know Dallas is great at both of those. So I mean, I don't know. I don't see this team keeping more than 3 tight ends, personally. And it's going to come down to that number 3 spot, I think, more so than the 2, because based on certain packages and what you would want on the field, I think the tight end 2 is going to change depending on the situation. Like, if you're in a red zone spot and you want to feature a little 12 personnel package, do you want a combination of Stull and Goddard out there? Do you want to bring Calcaterra into the mix and use his pass catching ability and a little bit of the connection that he already has with Jalen Hurts from Oklahoma? And again, we see the connections to the quarterback, whether it's AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. It was a little bit behind for Landon Dickerson, but now they bring in Grant Calcaterra, who has connections from Oklahoma, and and I like his story. I really do. And him coming back from multiple concussions and leaving football to be a firefighter, it's an awesome story. I like the kid. So I hope in his case that he is going to provide a lot of competition. I like what he brings. I like what he brings from an offensive standpoint. He always at his time at SMU, I believe he always seemed to be the kind of guy that was there at the right place at the right time for his quarterback. That he was a dependable target, much like we've seen with Zach Ertz, and now we're seeing with Dallas Goddard for Jalen Hurts. So maybe they're going to swap out the tight end 2 spot and alternate it between a group of Stull and Calcaterra. Not to say that I don't have faith in Tyree Jackson or, well, we have to mention him, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, with his positional change and him, respectively so, being at the end of the depth chart for the tight end spot. Not to say that I don't have faith in Tyree Jackson, but the injuries that he has sustained already, it's going to be difficult, especially at his size, to come back from. And it's a shame, honestly. It's a shame to me because we were looking at him to be our Logan Thomas experiment, the way that the Washington Commanders were able to transform him, from that, from a quarterback to tight end, and what Washington was able to do from that. And he ended up being a dependable target for Washington. So it's a shame, but really, there's a lot of different options that you can look at there from tight end, and I don't know that the Eagles would be. I don't know that the Eagles would be worse off depending on who they go with.
Yeah, to me, it's tight end 1 and tight end. Who cares? In the
Right.
sense of, I think, as you said, it's important to utilize each one in each package. You're probably going to get your best blocker, and at this point, you'd probably be Stull. And then, not saying Stull can't catch, because he started to do that a little bit at the end of the season when asked to. But Calcaterra has been, he got that he's a tight end, but he's used as a wide receiver. He's used as a big body wide receiver inside the red zone. And so, you always got to look at a guy who had concussions, as much as now you're getting hit over there. Now you're going to get hit here. They definitely protect the players as best as possible, but you got to keep that in mind. But at the end of the day, I think Grant Calcaterra is going to be a playmaker where you'll see him not be used volume, but when he gets in the game, he'll start to low key raise eyes, raise stock for the fan base to be like, oh, who is this? A nice back shoulder in the back of the end zone, jump ball over a linebacker or a safety. He'll quickly grow to the fan base. But I do believe it's that type of era, right? Let's look at Zach Ertz, right? After Brett Selleck was the guy, and Zach Ertz was the guy behind Brett Selleck, and they would share that tight end spot, right? It went from that to then Zach Ertz game. But Zach Ertz had the team. And if you really want to look at maybe his prime, you could probably say, 16, 17, 18 was when he was really going off. And then 1920, he fell off a little bit. In 1920, he had a share. Or 1920 share with Dallas Goddard. At 21 was his last bit of sharing before he got traded. All that being said, I think it's Dallas Goddard's game for a long time. And then these other guys will just come in and contribute via blocking and just making little spot snaps here and there. And you're
Decoys,
right about
maybe,
and you're right about Tyree Jackson. It would have been nice, to see another quarterback turn into tight end, especially with a body frame of that magnitude and
6'7", like good Lord.
Exactly. So, I think Grant Calcaterra is going to be, in Nick Sirianni's head to let's get him involved and up to speed as quick as possible, because he can definitely make some moves. And East Coast Gridiron, I didn't say he was a wide receiver. Again, he's a tight end that lined up as a wide receiver. He was what I'm not saying he's Kyle Pitts or nothing like that. All I'm saying is that he was utilized as a wide receiver from the tight end position, which is what we call hybrid type players in today's game. So I never said he was a wide receiver, but best believe when they were in the red zone, they weren't looking at him as the guy who's going to block before the guy who's going to catch a touchdown pass. That is what I was trying to get at. Not that he's a wide receiver that played tight end. I said he's a tight end who can do things of a wide receiver. So
right,
that's what I said.
Right, and I think it's in the way of how we used to utilize a guy like Trey Burton back in 2017 as the tight end three, and or no, he was the tight end too. Excuse me, but how he was alternated between him and Brent Selleck, where
Mason plays.
you had Brent Selleck on the field, you would give him a couple of passes here and there, and you used him from a physicality standpoint because the dude at that point was still a brick wall. Like he was hard to bring down, and I was just really happy for him to still get the football, and I still remember vividly that game against the Denver Broncos where we dropped a 50 burger on them, and to still see Brent Selleck get the football. I'm like, there's these dudes still bouncing off of him. I mean, he wasn't the most athletic guy in the world up to
Not
that
that.
point because age was robbing his athleticism, but just the build of lower leg muscle that he still had to keep himself upright, and the strength that he still possessed and made him difficult to bring down, and that's who a lot of what Goddard reminds me of is like a Brent Selleck type of tight end. I didn't necessarily see that. In Ertz. So that's where a lot of Selleck's influence in the game, kind of reflects on Goddard. But Dallas seems to be honing in terms of a route running standpoint. He's really getting better in that regard. And while him and Ertz were still on the field with that. With him as a blocker, he was still able to go out there, catch passes. We already know that deal. But getting back to Calcaterra, it's interesting because it kind of reminds me of the situation of where the Eagles were years ago with the concussion issues, and how we wanted to bring in Brandon Cooks, and everyone had their reservations that, oh well, he had this many concussions and yada yada. But yeah, he was still productive so long as you keep him healthy. And I think that's the biggest battle that Grant is going to have to deal with, especially with him lining up at the tight end position. If he's not going to be one that's always going to go up seam routes and whatnot, if you're gonna see him in situations where he's gonna try and hit a crosser over the middle, he's going to be around a lot of bodies and be subjected to a multitude of contact. So I think that's the caution with him going forward. But overall, I still like where the tight end position is, but it's set up perfectly for this to be Goddard's group, and that's something that he hasn't had for the last 3 years now. So he's set up in a great position. Um, if I can touch on another position that I was trying to think about here before the last topic, being that I try and keep my episodes to about an hour, and understanding, you don't have much time yourself either. I keep the respect as I possibly can, but running back is interesting to me too, Mike. I tell you what, you got Miles Sanders coming in a contract year. This is the last year of his rookie deal. All the talk and all the aura him about him being selected at the same exact number as Shady McCoy. They were both 53rd in their selected draft classes. Just the sheer excitement that we had with him coming out of Penn State, being a teammate of Saquon Barkley, and really we haven't seen the Miles Sanders we wanted to ever since his rookie year. And it's very weird that that kind of dynamic just hasn't come back to him yet. So you look at that. You look at a guy like Kenny Gainwell coming into year two. The Eagles are in love with the kid. They're going to try and elevate his role a little bit. How that may or may not impact Miles' carries, I don't necessarily think it's going to, because they want to put Miles in as many situations as possible to for him to show us what he can do. Boston Scott coming back, and then behind them two, you still have Jason Huntley here, and then the undrafted rookie out of Oklahoma in Kennedy Brooks. So I don't know. Plus you have the trade speculations of people wanting Kareem Hunt, and no, everyone's like, stick with Miles, see what he's got. People wanting Kareem as the second running back in the rotation. I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, because he's going to cost $6.2 million against the cap. I don't want to rid of any extra opportunity for Miles. So this is kind of a make or break type of year for him, and it's a shame because he's a fan favorite. He's easy to like, and he loves it here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's tough. The Miles Sanders thing is really hard for me in the sense that I love this guy and I always thought he
Right.
was going to step up. Um, I won't say it has been downhill since his rookie season. I think his rookie season showed us that he can make plays both rushing and receiving, and then we saw that receiving ability fall to the wayside. He didn't do it
Right.
the same way. He had that beautiful catch in the back of the end zone with Carson Wentz against the Washington football team. But besides
Yeah,
that,
back in 19, yeah.
yeah, besides that, you really didn't see anything else. When you look
But
at his game,
he's still a great rusher though, Mike. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
he
look, he
averaged around
averages 5 yards a
five.
carry. Yeah, listen,
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
listen for the volume the volume he
But
has.
0 touchdowns.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
We can say it comes down to this.
right. Yeah.
Miles Sanders is in a category. If you look at, at least 150 rushes per season
Mm-hmm.
to average 5+ yards per carry your whole career. Only people damn near in the Hall of Fame have done that. Like, look at the list
Mm-hmm.
that he's on. Again, if a guy rushes 60 times because he's only used sparingly throughout the season, that's different. But a guy who plays the whole season, rushes for over, I think it's $150. I got to double check. He's one of not many who averages 5 yards for 3-4 years plus. All that being
Yeah.
said, prior to this year that we just seen, I saw the 3 touchdowns of 70+ yards. I've seen him do things that I'm like, the growth is there. It's always been the injury problem for me, and the injury problem is still a concern at the running back position. And no touchdowns, regardless if we're going to say, well, Jalen Hurts had 10 rushing touchdowns. It didn't stop Jordan Howard for getting a couple. Didn't stop Boston Scott. Didn't stop Kenny Gainwell. I understand that he was hurt for a little bit. And yes, your opportunities are going to be less because Jalen Hurts is going to get some of them goal line touches. However,
Right.
you had 3 touchdowns the year prior from 70 yards out. You couldn't break one from 20. So his game, although it didn't trickle down in production from a yards per carry standpoint, he just hasn't been able to really provide anything that there hasn't been other running backs on the Eagles that haven't been able to do it to his level, or maybe a little better at times. I'm talking last year solely. So the way the running back market is, the way we drafted Kenneth Gainwell, the fact that the 3 games we were the best running was when he wasn't there. All that is hard for me to say, give him a contract. Now, what I would do if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles is I would let this year play out. I would use Miles Sanders as much as possible. This might sound bad, but if you run a guy into the ground, but you're not going to take him back, and from a business standpoint, it's not going to hurt you.
Absolutely.
I want to see him do it because I've always believed he could carry the ball between 15 to 20 times per game and be healthy. But each year he proves me he can't do that. He can't stay healthy with even less touches that I'm giving him. So it's always been hard. I know there's talent there, and that's why it's hard. But for a contract with the running backs we have and the fact that we will use committee as we've done in the past, I can't see it unless he proves it, it's a hard thing because if he balls out this year, well, now what are you going to do? 3 years of being injured, 1 year balling out, he's a running back. How long are you going to sign him for? What's the money you're going to give him? Do you think he's going to be any better now? If he gets 275 carries, 250 carries, and he does stay healthy, do you think he's going to come off that 250 17 season game and drop another 250? Earn that money and not get hurt? It's going to be tough. The running back position is getting devalued because you see schemes win the running battle. You see a guy or a team like the San Francisco 49ers that it doesn't matter if it's Elijah Mitchell, it doesn't matter if it's the guy who we had, I forgot his name. It doesn't matter if it's, Cedric, whatever. You throw them back there, they're going to run behind what they're calling. So, it's hard for me to say because I love the Alvin Kamara's, the Christian McCaffreys, the Miles Sanders, and then even the Derrick Henrys, the Zeke Elliott's when he was running hard, and the Dalvin Cooks, the Chubbs, the Nick Chubbs of the world. But it's
Nick
like,
Chubb and Kareem Hunt. You talking about duos? Yeah.
yeah. But it's also like, again, a running back is drafted. A running back plays 4 years. Only the special ones can do it for another 4 years, and only the special ones nowadays still don't do it to that level on the second back end of their next 4 years. So it's like, what is the extension going to be given? How much is the money? If he's willing to take outside the top 10 running backs, I'm thinking I'm doing it. If he's wanting top 6, that's where it draws the line.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of, coincidentally, Jordan Howard and what he brought to the team, well, you saw how he kind of fell off, after the Chicago Bears. And, I
partly
think he
our
had
fault,
3.
probably, because we break people for that. That was the era when you come to the Eagles, you get hurt. You know what I mean? Think about it.
I think he almost had 3 straight 1,000-yard rushing seasons until Matt Nagy started to prefer Tariq Cohen over him, and he kind of fell out of the offense. But it's a shame when we look at Miles. Like, what is the ultimatum here? Like, what do you think he ultimately needs to do? Like, are you looking for 11 to 1,200 rushing yards and maybe 7-8 touchdowns from him to justify a contract? I mean, outside of the performance, I think he's only averaging about playing 12, 13 games a year. So that's playing into it as well. That it's not like his injuries are drastic ones, but they're nagging over time, and it's keeping him off the football field consistently. He just can't stay healthy. There's a lot of things going against him right now. You look at the running back by committee approach that the Eagles do, even though he's considered the running back, he's considered RB1, but they still like to bring in Boston Scott for certain situations. They still want to feature Kenny Gainwell, maybe more as a pass catching back instead. They're still trying to bring these guys in. So, it's almost like, well, what kind of ultimatum do we create here in which Miles can produce to justify a contract? It's like there's a lot of things working against him right now.
Yeah, and just to finish this up, I would try to sign Miles to a team-friendly deal. That's what I would try to do, right? Especially if, like Bergang's saying, you're not going to use him that much. Well, then you got to get paid on your usage. All that coming around to say this: I believe in the kid. I want him to have a great season, but this is how I see it. If he doesn't have a great season, if he has another injury season, he's gone. But now he's gone, and whoever signs him is going to give him a little not so much deal. He might be able to just go off the potential, and a team that is not really able to win but wants to get just wants to grow their name out there and put some players on the field that can play might sign him. On the flip side, he has a monster season, and because it's his last year, he says, I want this. Eagles don't match it, and then a team that is greedy in free agency, which you always got to overpay in free agency. That's why Tristan. Wait, what was the receiver for the Arizona Cardinals?
Christian Kirk. That got overpaid. He got
in here, played $19 million because you're bidding. So I see a scenario where Miles Sanders has a repeat year of this year, 5 yards a carry, but not productive enough to stay. You're out. Or too good of a season. We want you back at this price. But listen, the stinky Lions, although they're stinky Lions, they're willing to give me top 8 running back money because it's the Lions, and that's what they do,
Yeah.
Or it's the Texans. You're not going to win ever again, but you're going to make your deal.
Right.
And Miles Sanders got to worry about his deal because he was a second-round pick. He needs to get something to, help his family, and more power to him.
And I hope that's the crossroad that he avoids, where you don't create a scenario to which, contractually, do I want to win or do I want to go for the money? And I hope he doesn't end up going down the road of that. When you talk about the Texans and the Detroit Lions, I would think that he would want to win, right? But either way, I mean, to touch on this one briefly to finish, and put a bow on this episode, as that has been phenomenal. Obviously, honestly, it's been phenomenal. But a pressure evaluation, and again, it's another regurgitated topic. But now that we have a little bit more, context to it with the players that we have brought in, whether it's, with the AJ Browns, the Jordan Davises, from the draft class, trades, free agency, etc. I mean, you're looking at Jalen Hurts, you're looking at Sirianni, you're looking at Gannon. I mean, where does the ultimate amount of pressure lie here? But you can arguably say that there is an even distribution, but I think the easy punching bag at this point for most of the fan base has been Jonathan Gannon, especially with the drastic turnaround that the Eagles have done in certain position groups that have put a overwhelming excitement on the fan base, and seeing what Gannon can ultimately come up with when he first came to Philadelphia, and bringing upon the hits principle, and wanting to show us by word of mouth instead of on the football field, and an aggressive type of defense. And it was there was a lot to be desired. So I mean, we're just hoping at this point, well, is this the year that this defense brings out the best in Jonathan Gannon, or is he ultimately not up to the job? Stuff like that. Jalen Hurts has looming contract talks over him, with Elliott Shore Parks' opinion that he had today that got blown out of proportion. So I mean, there's a lot that's trying to be brought into the franchise right now from the outside looking in. So, I mean, from a realistic standpoint, in terms of pressure here, I mean, what are you honestly looking at the most from the standpoint of the team?
When I hear the word pressure, again, I think, I hate to say it because Dave Spadero always says it to me now, and that I always ask him the same damn thing. He's like,
Right.
there's no more pressure that can be put on a coach, a player, a person in the National Football League than what they're going to put on
Sure.
themselves. All that being said, the Eagles should succeed this year. If not, there's reasons why. If there's a clean bill of health. I think the head football coach always has pressure because he's the one controlling everything, right? Ultimately, if your quarterback's not getting it done, it's a little bit of you, and you also have the ability to change it, right? If your
Yes.
defensive coordinator's not getting done, it's still ultimately on you too. All that being aside, Jonathan Gannon has a lot of pressure because of the tools that were awarded to him, or given to him this offseason. He kind of asked for it. He got it. He wanted versatility. That is the exact point that the Eagles went out and got. They got guys who can play cover one, cover two, zone man. They got guys who can blitz, drop back. They got guys who can play 3-4 fronts, 4-3 fronts. So there's really no excuse
I mean,
there.
Realistically, Mike, has Jim Schwartz ever had this kind of depth on defense? I mean, that's where
that Super Bowl team was pretty good in the sense of what they did in the front seven, because Nigel Bradham was playing at a high level at linebacker. So when you had Bradham at linebacker, the front four, and although what was his name, Jalen Mills and
Ronald Darby.
Yeah, I mean, they were starting to become worse, but they were probably at their best. They were never great with the Eagles, but they were at their best. And they had a guy like Malcolm Jenkins behind and Ronnie McLeod. And because of that front four and front seven was so good, it made them look a little bit better. That's why when the front seven got worse, their true colors came out. To bring it back around, the NFL is going so much as it's the quarterback's fault they win, it's the quarterback's fault they lose. Is that the right mindset we should be having? I don't know. I don't believe so. However, that's the way it's going. And I can say this. If Jonathan Gannon, who I think you can argue Gannon hurts. If Gannon gets fired as a DC, it's an easier chance he gets a DC job somewhere else than a starting quarterback who kind of shows he can't do it ever starts again long term. You see, again, Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. He won a Super Bowl and he had the greatest 2-game stretch ever. not many teams are giving him a starting position. He's only got the backup position since there. Marcus Mariota, first round pick, backup.
Yep.
Vince Young, once he proved he couldn't do no more, backup. When you start to show that, now Jalen Hurts is 23 years old, and I believe he's going to take the steps necessary where this conversation don't need to be had. But right now, when the steps haven't
potential.
been, right now with the steps not being taken yet, I think quarterbacks are asked to play earlier nowadays than they ever been in the past. Quarterbacks are asked to do more nowadays than they had to do in the past. So the game is evolving and the pressure is becoming more and more on quarterbacks. I'm not here to debate if it's right or wrong. I'm here to tell you that every quarterback that is starting has pressure unless you are a Brady, a Mahomes, a Rodgers, because you have that. But guess what? Let Rodgers come out and start 0-3 and be not even in the top 15 quarterbacks. The Green Bay Post will be writing it's Jordan Love's time. He's too old now. Drew Brees got kicked out as soon as he stopped playing up to standards in the playoffs. There were Saint fans that I know personally that wanted him out. The quarterback position is just a position where if you're not playing good ball, you will get the most criticism, point blank. And it's a hard position, but that's why I think Jalen Hurts, he got the mindset to play it. He got the mindset to block it all out. The other ones must too, because they've been playing that position. However, it's becoming more and more harder for these quarterbacks, whether it's right or wrong. And so, there is definitely pressure on Jalen Hurts because he's getting close to his contract. You got guys like Elliott Shore-Park saying if Jalen Hurts is going to get 35 to 40 million, he reads that, now that's in his head. Although it's not in his head because he's not that guy. I'm just saying, you really look down. If you look at any team that is newish and competing, their quarterback is being judged. You got Doug Peterson over there and you got Trevor Lawrence. Now the pressure's even more on Trevor Lawrence. You got a Super Bowl winning head coach on your team that got Carson Wentz and Nick Foles really good, right? Pressure's on Trevor Lawrence. Pressure's on a lot of quarterbacks. So, Bergang hates when I say this, but I definitely want to see Jonathan Gannon because he let quarterbacks throw for 80%, far too much in the first half of the season. Nick Sirianni avoided a run far too much in the first quarter of the season. Jalen Hurts grew, fell back in the season. That's much more expected as a 23-year-old young player than just, abandoning certain things and actually just falling back and just saying y'all can throw all you want. So it's tough, but I always still say, as much as I support Jalen, to me, he still got the most pressure because if his job is lost, it's going to be a lot harder to make another team say, oh, you could be a franchise guy. Jonathan Gannon can just go talk to one of his buddies and, be coaching defensive backs or, be in the DC for the Texans. When you if you need a job, you go to the Texans.
We were already at one point, Mike, where we're hoping for this guy to take a head coaching position. I mean, I think that speaks volumes already for him to be considered as a head coach.
Whether it's right or wrong, that's how football
exactly
season, right?
Exactly. People, there's plenty of people that just wanted him out of there. But I think this question by Birdman is a good way to exit the stream, in which he says, "Who's more likely to lose their job, Sirianni or Hurts?" Well, to me, it's Hurts, and I don't want to say it's not even close, but when you look at what Sirianni has built to this point in terms of the collaboration between his coaching staff and the front office, and watching what he did last year and humbling himself to make the necessary adjustments and adding more of the run game to compensate for some of your lacking quarterback play. What he did in stepping down and allowing Shane Steichen to be the primary play caller, even though he's going to have involvement, but there was a humbling effect that needed to, that's shown there. And I think the other part is the fact that the Eagles as a whole have set up their football team in a way where it's more, the quarterback position is more plug and play now than it primarily is on, we need a certain quarterback. We need a certain quarterback there. Not like the Eagles were before, where they were trying to build around Carson Wentz, and they relied on his skill set to kind of lift a little bit of the limitations that the team had from a playmaking and personnel standpoint. Now it's a little bit different when you look at the wide receiver core, when you look at having a number one tight end, when you look at the defense as a whole and how they were able to support Jonathan Gannon. Well, you have a team now. You're not just in a spot where you're trying to compensate for a lot of holes like a piece of Swiss cheese. The team's not in that position anymore like they used to be. So now it's almost set up to where even if they wanted to bring a veteran quarterback in here, so long as from a schematic standpoint it all works out, that they fit the system, it's more plug and play that way. But when you look at it ultimately, this is Jalen Hurts' team.
Oh, yeah.
And they set it up for him to either succeed or fail. So it's like, okay, Jalen, we gave you the reins. It's all up to you now. We're going to support you. We're going to be here. We're going to be here from a football standpoint to support you along your way. But now it's up to you to take that next step in development and showing us on the football field what you have done throughout the offseason, because you have plenty of weapons to look at now. There's no excuses. You're in a perfect position. The defense is in a perfect position. Now it's to show us a product on the field to where we can confidently say that this team is capable of winning 12 games and winning the division, because that's the way that they're built. So I don't think we can paint it any better than to just watch in anticipation when training camp shows up July 26th, and watching all these players grow, and especially the rookies that came in. There's a lot of excitement right now in terms of Eagles football, and it can't come soon enough. So with that, looks like we actually went an extra 20 minutes over the anticipated time that I usually keep these episodes at. But it just all depends on the activity. I mean, we've stayed concurrent for I think the last half hour, anywhere from 15 to 17 viewers, Mike. So sometimes you go along with the audience, but and that's just a shout out to you guys overall and the consistent support that you give to the Eagles content creator community. And again, a big thank you to Philly Mike here for taking time out of his busy day to hang out with me and talk some Philadelphia Eagles with in the capacity that we're able to. So we're not trying to repeat conversations here. But yep. That'll put a bow on episode 16 of Touchdown Talk, and 16 viewers, episode 16. What an awesome segue to the conclusion. But with that said, thank you to everybody, for showing up and listening to us talk about the Eagles for over an hour. And of course, again,
subscribe
like I said,
to the channel.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know how the hell this would be a thing at this point. But if you don't know who Philly Mike is, I don't know what you're doing. Go look at his channel. One of the biggest contributors when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles and the 76ers. Although me being a Mavericks fan, loving Luka and all that, I do have a soft spot for Iverson still, as I grew up watching them. But nonetheless, Mike being a big contributor to the Sixers and Eagles, do be sure to check out his channel and everything that he does. The subscription is just as valuable, to me, to him as it is to me, because that's how the love is spread in the city of brotherly love that is Philadelphia sports. So with that, Lindy is going to be signing off here. Thank you all for watching. Mike, again, it has been a pleasure for you coming on, and I appreciate your time once again, man. It was good.
No problem.
It's good talking it up. So that'll do it, everybody. Have a good night. Fly Eagles, fly bleed green. You already know the deal. See you guys next time. Thank you.